So we finished up Ascetic, and now we're going on to Augmentation Dragon. Woo, dragon! There's a bunch of lore here about dragons, and uh, dragon is 50 of wizardry and 50 of adept. So sorcery and weapon mastery, respectively, for the lower pools. And you are the pinnacle of stamina and magic, the dragon. Uh, And ascetic was kind of harder to explain this, but when you augment, you are augmenting your race towards a actual race. So there are dragons, and dragon is a race. And when you're augmenting, you're becoming much more like a dragon, essentially. And dragon is like the easiest example because dragon is very much in the culture. But like when you think of what a ascetic is as a race, that's like kind of a little bit harder to wrap your head around. But it's pretty easy for dragon, and that's why I'm bringing it up here, because you start to turn into a dragon when you become an augment, which is why that is the reason why you can't be an elder of your race, because you are no longer technically, in terms of what elders care about, you are not technically that race anymore when you become an augment. Uh, This is going to have similar costs of like 1-in-1 with the upper pools, just like Ascetic had. I'm not going to be covering that any further in any of the rest of the videos, so hopefully you watch these first two ones. And dragons are dragons. Makeup requirements. Uh, New dragons, scales with a pointed tip. New dragons begin with clear scales, represented with a black outline and no scale color. The eventual outline and color of your scales are determined by plot. If your race includes facial makeup requirement while giving a scale color, you should adjust your makeup to receive a 50-50 split of racial and scales. This is relevant if you're playing Gargoyle, because Gargoyles have similar makeup to dragons and stuff, and it can be tough to represent some races with this augment specifically. If you want an example, this is Dragon. So Dragon very clearly has scales, and this guy's a multi-augment, so he's a dragon and a paladin. Paladin and dragon. And then he's a dark elf, which is why he has purple skin tone, right? But imagine if you were just going to be a dragon, your whole thing would be this. So if he was a dark elf dragon, he would not have this gray in between the scales. He would simply have the scales, and that's it. And the reason why there are colors is because the color of your dragon and the given color, just like how in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is very common, and I imagine that you probably know this if you're playing LARP, the different colors of dragons represent different personality types. And specifically, there are actual rulings and determinations on what the colors are and what your actions do to accomplish that. So if you're a new dragon, as soon as you become a dragon, plot, like the people that run the game, every once in a while, they're going to be looking at the decisions that you make. And after a little bit, about when you're like halfway kind of through the skills or when it becomes relevant, you're going to be a specific colored dragon, right? So for this guy, where is it? General information. This guy happened to be a gray or an iron. This could also be iron or silver. I'm not quite sure what exactly it is, but he's a grayish colored dragon, based off of his personality. I assume that also means they're good guy, because this is also a sunburst, which means that he's kind of a good guy. So I imagine this is like aligned with the good colors. But this very much gets into individuals and their sense of morality. And what you think your sense of morality is different from how you act. And your actions are what plot determines this by. They have like a whole I've never done it. I've never been a part of it, so I couldn't tell you exactly how it works. But if you're a good guy, you're going to end up with kind of a good color. And if you're a scumbag, you're going to kind of end up with a scumbag color. And let me tell you, people will judge you based off of the color of your scales in this game. In this LARP, people will judge you based off of the color of your scales, okay? Um, like if they see a specific color, they're like, "Oh, that guy's a scumbag." And if they see like another like a good color, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I can trust you," like very quickly. And then there's also it's not just like the base colors. There's also metallics and gems and stuff like just like how vast dragons are in like 5th edition or any of the Dungeons and Dragons editions. They're very like vast here. So there's plenty of room to be a unique colored dragon based off your personality if you see fit. And this they also very much talk to you about it. They also very much say like, "Hey, we think you're this color because of this. Do you care to include any of your motivations?" So we might because you could be a total scumbag and make all the right decisions and deep inside you're a total scumbag. And if you don't talk to plot about like why you're doing certain things, so it's very much you get to interact with plot, and when you're this big of build in terms of your character, like you're going to be have plenty of experience talking with plot marshals and other members to kind of figure it out. A lot of people have a goal or an ideal that they're shooting for with a given character in the terms of their roleplay, and I'd say 8 out of 10 times it pretty much aligns with the color that they get. I've definitely encountered times where somebody's like, "Well, this wasn't the color that I was trying to be." Well, it's the color that you kind of acted like, I assume. And that comes down to individuals, honestly, because it's about morality and like how certain things work. And that's very much a judgment call a lot of the times with a plot marshal. So but yeah, that's a neat thing about their makeup requirements, and it's also going to come up on Worm, I believe, and Eldritch and Paladin to an extent. In terms of like what thing you end up being. There's 3 different types of paladins. Anyway, we're here to talk about dragons. So, dragons, not to be confused with the racial trueborn dragons, which are a thing. They're not in the rulebook, but there are actual dragons that you can play as a race. It's on the retirement. I'm gonna let you in on the secret real quick. It's on the retirement race. So if you retire a really big character, you get to play a dragon. Oh, isn't that cool? It makes sense, and it's not really too much of like a oh that's crazy. But yeah, so there are true born dragons, which are literally racial dragons, and then these are all very much creatures, real creatures and races that exist that are like the apexes of these skills. Like you're a character that does weapon mastery really well, right? That weapon mastery is essentially an emulation of the race thing. There's a given race thing that does that weapon mastery as a racial, right? Like it's not like a skill or a pool that they pick up. Like they have that skill as a racial, right? And um that kind of represents what that these skills don't really come from individuals. They come from a source within the world of a given apex of a race, and then they descend downwards into skills that people mimic these things, right? So racial augmentation is pretty much the closest you can get to being a dragon without actually playing a Drewborn dragon. And I would say Elder is probably even more so, right? Uh, anyway, that little ran out of the way. We're gonna get into the skills. 8 minutes into the video, we're gonna get into the skills. Okay, threshold, 10 build, 20 body, costs use, doesn't matter. Upon learning the skill, the dragon gains 12 threshold. This ability stacks with existing threshold. So earlier I said that I had met a gargoyle dragon. So they played a base gargoyle and had like 6 threshold or whatever. And then when you become a dragon, you get 12. So they had like 18 threshold, which is nuts. And then there's another spell that gives you like 4. So you're rocking around with like potentially 24 threshold or something dumb. So yeah, so this stacks. We've talked about threshold. Threshold is pretty relevant, especially when you're starting to get like into the big numbers. Like you're easily past 10 here. And this is just 12 threshold is just good, man. Like there's a lot of things that swing for 10, and being immune to that is kind of nutty. Now, granted, it has to go through your armor first, and that's like a whole conversation to have. But 12 threshold, pretty good. If you saw the couple of races that had it, we went in depth with those. Pretty good. You just get a flat 12 threshold as a base dragon. Pretty sweet. You get Dragon Claws, 6 build to 12 body. This is pretty tanky. Dragons grow strong claws. The skill permanently changes the dragon's forelimbs into claws, similar to the claws that some races have, except the claws are base 4 damage long claws. Please note that this stacks with other claws for we covered this in Ascetic. Your claws can stack, except that short claws don't stack with long claws, but long claws stack with short claws. So if you racially had Beastman, let's say, and you had regular claws, your regular claws would swing for 5 here, but your long claws would still be this base 4. I think that's how that works. Feel free for any of the more experienced players who have done this before to comment in the video or tell me their opinion later on Discord. Either way. Yeah, so long claws, pretty cool. Long claws are good. They get to do the long sword length claws, which is very good. All right. Dragons can detect magic on items or people. They get detect magic touch as a racial skill, kind of a racial skill. Upon acquiring the skill, the dragon may touch an object or person to either detect, dispel, or identify magical properties for these individual costs. Detect, you get to do for free. Identify is 2 and 2, and dispel is 2 and 2. It is also not considered a spell and will not set off spell defenses. So there's a sorcery spell that does this for like 10 sorcery or something silly. Or like 8 and 10, I think. Don't quote me on that. Again, I'm not a spellcasting player. I like whacking things. But these also don't count as this is a racial thing, so it doesn't count as a spell. It is you're doing it as part of your like race. You're doing it as part of being a dragon. It's only necessary to purchase a skill once. All actives, rituals, and all metamagic items on the target will be revealed. If the target is a being, they must be either willing or immobile. So you don't get to dispel magic on somebody. Yeah, so this doesn't let you just throw dispel magics for 2 and 2. Like that's not. This is very much a interacting with an item that plot handed you kind of type thing. So if plot like hands you like a magic egg and this magic egg is supposed to lead you to the dungeon where the bad guy is at, then you can like identify the egg and see how it's doing stuff, right? Like etc. It's neat to have, and being able to do it without it counting as a magic spell is relevant sometimes. It's just cool, honestly. And I couldn't tell you how often it comes up, because when it does come up, it's not my. I play an Olophidian, man. I don't care about magic crap. So it's not really in my realm of expertise. But it's neat, and it's 5 build for 10 bodies, so you pick this up all the time. You, with augments, it doesn't really make sense to not pick up every skill. You kind of want to have every augment skill you can get your hands on. They're all just way too good. Dragons can attack with an acid. Oh, okay. So we're gonna see a lot of skills here that are like element fire, element earth, element ice. You're not picking up every single one of these. You're picking it up dependent upon what color thing you are. So we talked earlier about being a red dragon or a blue dragon or a golden dragon or a silver dragon, right? And based on whatever that is, they get different elemental stuff. So we're going to just cover breathe weapon, a breath weapon, right? 1 and 1 cost, 1 build skill, and you can see that that's kind of copied paste along all these other breath weapon stuff. So we'll see once we get. So these are all. So there's acid, fire, earth, ice, lightning. So the 4 elements plus acid, and then magic, and then it goes on to a different skill. Okay, so covering it. The elemental pool gives the dragon the ability to throw a raw element, which is listed above with the attached skill. This type of element is chosen by plot and is only purchased once. Then, as needed, the dragon may choose to throw an attack such as 25 elemental ice, which costs 1 and 1 per 25 points. It is possible to throw as many variations as you wish, as many times as you can pay the per use cost. So if you want to grab 3 packets and throw 3, like you can stack it as much as you'd like. So if you want to have 1 packet do 75, you pay 3 and 3, and you're doing 25, 25, 25, but with 1 packet. I think that's what this means. And it's specifically only 1 packet, I believe, as many variations as you wish, as many times as you can pay the per-use cost. So if you just want to stand back and do 75s of an element that you can throw for 3 and 3 every time, you could just do that. I've seen dragons that are just constantly like breathe weapon, breath weapon, breath weapon. And I think it's just you gotta just throw so it's like 25 elemental ice, 25. You don't have to say like breath weapon specifically. There is a skill that dragons do that specifically it is that, and I think it's an elder thing. But we'll eventually get into that. And then you have one for every one of the types of things you can get. And then you get a immunity to an element. Character is now immune to all element weapon strikes, spells, environmental, all elemental element packet effects, and may now breathe and endure that element at will. In addition, you may choose to accept beneficial effects while you are conscious and willing, including effects that would heal you. For example, a dragon immune to ice may put itself into an ice maelstrom. Furthermore, if your metabolism is elemental, element effects that would otherwise heal you still function normally. Okay, that's kind of a mouthful. So basically, it's an immunity with upside. So if you're immune to ice and then there's a beneficial ice thing that you would want, then you still get to take the beneficial stuff, right? It's an enhanced immunity. It's not just a flat immunity. So it's good. You get to get the good things that you want out of it. And there's like an earth spell that gives you strength. And if you were just flat immune to earth, you wouldn't be able to take the spell. But because this is an enhanced immunity, you can take the beneficial earth spell even if you were immune to earth, right? It's a big paragraph to explain a very simple understanding. Otherwise you're immune to earth, you can endure it, you can breathe it at will. Breathe/endure element at will. Yeah, like it's super good. This is better than a standard immunity. And then we have all the different things, all the different elements, immunities, and then we have a suppressible element aura. At this point, the dragon acquires the ability to strike with their plot-chosen element whenever needed. It is possible to strike for an element with blade or claw or even bite. It is only necessary to purchase this, and there is no per-use cost. So again, suppressible element. So whatever element that you got picked for or plot gave you, you can swing it through anything. I know that the short description says through claws, but this says blade or claw or bite. So I mean, you get to swing whatever element you get through your sword flat out. There's no additional costs. There's no extra bells or whistles. It's just you get to swing for that element whenever you feel like it. Pretty good. Like that's pretty good, especially if you get like acid or magic. Magic's pretty cool. Then there's the suppressible auras, and then will channel. Dragon can channel spells through their claws. 5 and 5. Using the skill Will Channel allows the dragon to spell strike any spells that he can normally cast for combat duration. This skill works very much like the racial ability of a channeler. As long as the dragon has the correct amount of spirit or sorcery points and has the spell in the book, he may, instead of casting the spell, strike the spell through his claws, a bite, or a weapon. So essentially, you pay 5 and 5 of the uppers of Wizardry and Adept to Wizardry and Adept to be able to be a channeler for combat duration, where you get to just spell strike all things. It doesn't make your spell strikes cheaper. It doesn't make you do things better. It just lets you spell strike the things that you could already cast for combat duration. Which, do not underestimate this. Like, this is really good. I know that it's like total 10, but being able to spell strike is significantly good. Like, it really ends up with a lot of benefits to being able to do that. And if you really don't want to, then you can just not use the skill. You know, it's pretty good. And that's a correct ability. And it works for spirit stuff as well as sorcery stuff. So if you have spirit, because this is wizardry and adept, so this is sorcery and weapon mastery. If you have spirit, you can also it's not locked in like where ascetic had specifically only spirit spells they can spell strike. These guys can spell strike anything, but they're paying a per use cost or a per cost for the combat duration, right? So that was base dragon. That was interesting, I'd say. So you get like claws, threshold, detect magic touch, and then you get to breathe a weapon. And immunity to you get a breathe an element. like dragon breath weapon and element, you get an enhanced immunity to that element, and you get a suppressible aura to that element, and then you also get to spell strike stuff. That's base. There's no dragon is pretty straightforward here. You're doing elemental stuff based off the color of your scales, and you have claws and threshold, right? Pretty simple. It's not like Ascetic where there was all this complicated crap where it's like, oh, you get to ascend and then you can also phase out, and then if you get hit with this spell, you can do like you could absorb it and get this benefit and all this other crap. Um Dragon is pretty straightforward. Dragon is like getting 12 you have all of these body ratios, all of the Ascetic body ratios were 1-to-1. But the dragon is getting 2-to-1 ratios in terms of build to body. That's like pretty good. Uh So you're going to be tanky, you're going to have threshold, and you're going to be swinging or throwing an element of whatever element you are. And you're also going to be immune to that, which is pretty good. Like that's a really solid place to start. And keep in mind, this is all at base dragon, right? So if we talked earlier in the aesthetic video about multi-augmenting, a lot of people that multi-augment pick up dragon because you get an enhanced immunity to a thing and you get detect magic touch threshold. Like this is a really good, if you're going to multi-augment, I highly recommend picking up dragon either as like the first augment you do or the second augment. Like picking like base dragon compared to aesthetic, at least, right, that we covered earlier, can kind of feel a little bit underwhelming, and that's not inherently a bad thing, right? Like some people just want a very straightforward experience. They don't want all this like weird crap that aesthetic does with like man, the amount of like weird skill stuff that aesthetic does is just so weird. But dragon is straightforward, and some people really want that. And so it's very good to have a kind of augment like that. And but it also is really good when you multi-augment, which is probably why the guy with the dark elf guy that was a paladin and a dragon, that's probably why he did that. It's because dragon augment, you get so much for augmenting into base dragon. Like this is pretty good. All right, so we're going to jump into elder dragon. You get to physically resist. So gargoyles, right? We talked about gargoyles having racially when we covered gargoyles as a race. They have physical resist as a racial, and they get 3 of them. Oh my god, this is a 10. This is a 1-to-5 ratio for the elders. So you're getting a crap ton of body, by the way, when you're playing an elder. Like, what's it? 20, 10, 10. You're at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 120. Oh, I was miscounting. You're getting like 100 body though, like across all of base dragon. That's not anything to scoff at. Like that's really good. Okay, like most people are running around with sub 200 body. You got to keep that in mind. Like vast majority of players are running around with 200 or less body, kinda. And there's a ton of like, and that's taking the top of the top, right? Like a lot of people are rocking like 200 body ish and then like a bunch of armor. All of the guys that are sub, like everyone who would be sub racial augment, because you know how you have to be like 210, 220, 250 ish to be able to augment. Okay, when you're at like 200 build, your body total is like sub 100 most of the time. Like most of the time, you are sub 100. So this type of amount of body is actually nuts. For a lot of the races, like there's a lot of races that are playable, like folk, that don't get a ton of body and they don't have athletics. So they don't just have like an easy way to get body. So like, don't pass up the fact that you're getting a crap ton of body from Dragon. All right. Anyway, 3-to-1 ratio for all the Elder stuff is freaking nuts. But we talked about gargoyles and how they get to racially do physical resists, and how ascetics get to phase for 3 and 3. Elder dragons get to physical resist for 3 and 3. Not nearly as good as phase, but very in character for somebody that gets threshold and is a dragon. And it's also really good. Again, physically resisting a weapon blow interacts with like 60 to 70% of the things that are going to be hitting you. So, real good here. Definitely something like you don't feel bad about having this skill and not having the phase ascetic one because you're getting all this other stuff that's relevant, like threshold and being able to swing your element crap. Strength. This is the first one that we're seeing that you can purchase more than once. All of the others augment skills that we've seen so far, you may only have purchased once. This one for 3 build, and you get 15 body every time. Let's do some quick math. 15 times 6 is 90. You're getting literally 90 body out of just buying all 6 of your strength. And this is just essentially uh, enhanced strength that you see in all of the racials for like a given base race. So I think it was Flesh Golem got like 6, I think. Don't quote me on that, but Flesh Golem got like 6. So if you were a Flesh Golem and you got this, you could get 6 more. So you'd have base 12 strength. That's pretty cool and pretty relevant. So you're adding, if you had, so this specifically gives you 6, so you'd be getting +3 to each hand, which that's nothing like, that's not bad at all. Especially if you have regular base racial enhanced strength. Let's see. Dragon Elder enhanced. Yeah, so this is the enhanced weapon breath, and your breath weapon becomes more powerful. So instead of doing 1 and 1 and throwing a 25 packet, you do 1 and 1, and now you throw a 50 packet. Also, you can throw as many packets as you simultaneously can for the 50 points of damage at a time. So let's just like put this in a regular example. So you pay 1 and 1 and you have a pouch full of spell packets, okay, that you would use for casting spells or whatever, and you grab a handful, as many as you can fit in the palm of your hand. So let's just say like 10 or 15, right? Like, and then you just chuck 15 spell packets at the same time with the same throw, and you pay 1 and 1, and anybody who gets hit by it takes 50. Okay, they take 50. It's not like, oh, I got hit by 3, and then so now I take 50, 50, 50. It's just if you get hit by any of them, you take 50. So you get to do a wide arc Dragon's Breath attack as an Elder, right? It's not just the I'm throwing a single packet for 25. Now you're throwing a bunch of packets, AoE style, and you're doing 50. There's been a lot of times where a dragon is standing behind people, like in like the second or the third like line of fighters, and like let's say a big line of like a big mod, and there's like ranks of people behind each other. Like the mages will sit in the back, and the fighters will be up front, right? And the dragon's sitting in the back, and they do this, and then they just like hit 3 of the fighters in the back, and so they turn around, and they take 50. They turn around, and go, "What the heck, man?" And you just hit them for like 50 elemental damage. But hopefully you hit the bad guys too. So this is really sick, and it's 10 build for 50 body. It's actually nuts. Really good. This is what I was thinking of the most. I thought you got this like at base, but this is definitely an elder. And doing it at 1-to-1 for 50 is nuts. Again, we talked about like the average HP of people, and monsters probably are walking around with a lot less. So doing 50 for 1-to-1 is like pretty good ratio. Aha, okay. So, enhanced will channel. So this was the spell striking stuff. So now you don't have to pay any cost to spell strike sorcery stuff. The wizardry things, the grant repel weapons, etc. And the only reason you pay 5/5 now is to do the spirit stuff. So now you get to do your sorcery stuff, spell strike it for free. That's pretty good. As an elder, that's pretty good. Like we've covered why spell striking is good, and now you get to do sorcery stuff for free. The spells aren't free. The spell striking stuff is free for sorcery specifically. You still pay 5 and 5 to do spirit, That makes sense. It's just kind of like a little brownie point, like, hey, now you can do the sorcery stuff for free, the stuff that you're probably good at if you're a dragon, because dragon requires wizardry, which is sorcery. All right, and then you get Elemental Strike, and this is for a given element, so whatever element you got from plot. The dragon may further pay use cost of 1 and 1. They may strike 50 massive element of their appropriate element. This skill also stacks with all weapon mastery and add-up skills that have a number damage call. Okay, massive. We talked about if you go look at Troll, the Troll video, they get to swing at for massive as a racial. Um, so massive, I think, requires a minimum of 4 enhanced strength racially, essentially, or if you got it from a spell or something, to be able to block it normally. So this is pretty good, and it's super good if you're just trying to clear out like little monsters, so like little goblins or like spiders or some crap. That's just like a thing that you don't care about that isn't like the main bad guy. This is good for sorting through the chaff because you're paying 1 and 1 and massive, and a lot of things don't have 4 strength to be able to block it. So you just go like you spend like 3 and 3 and you just go like 50 massive fire, 50 massive fire, 50 massive fire, and like there's not a whole lot of like chaff monsters that will like live through that typically. Pretty good skill. Massive, and you get to do it one weapon strike. Oh, one weapon strike. So it doesn't have to be with your claws. And then this is the difference: earth, fire, ice, lightning, magic. Immunity to normal weapon dragons. To normal weapons. Upon acquiring the skill, being completely immune to basic weapons / claw bites / 12 damage. And also, yeah, you get immune to base slay, by the way, when you get immune to damage. So I mean, if they go like magic slay, and that's why when we talk about elements and being able to like use different things, so this guy's immune to regular slay. So if you walked up to him with a regular sword and you spent your 10 weapon mastery to do slay, he would say no effect. But if you got a mage to cast a spell on your sword to let you swing magic, now you can say magic slay, and that would get around this. Um, being immune to fucking normal damage is pretty good though. Like nobody's complaining when they have this skill. This is super cool. So yeah, dragons they get to breathe their element. They get a cool unique roleplay, and there's a ton of roleplay in the scale color stuff. There's a ton of roleplay, and it's so interesting when you get to dive into it. Worm has a similar scale thingy. They aren't scales, they're well, they might be scales, I don't know. But yeah, that was dragon. Looks like this one only took about 30 minutes because Dragon is pretty straightforward, and I would go as far as to say that this is the best augment to multi-augment with. Like, there's a really good reason to like enhanced immunities. So like if let's just say you're a folk, right? And you pick fairy. So you're now immune to and you go, "Oh no, that's in the elders, so you couldn't do that." Okay. Yeah. Okay, theoretically you have like an enhancement. Oh, that's not in the rule book. I can't explain that either. There's a good reason. This essentially, let's say you're immune to fire, and then you get to play like a blue dragon, so you get immune to like ice. So now you're immune to like fire and ice, right? This is like a lot of people do this to pick up a second immunity. So now if you have 2 of the elements you're immune to, typically one of those elements is going to show up in one of the game in like most of your games. Like one of the two, you 50-50 shot that the elements that show up in a given game, like the given fire elementals if it's hot or ice elementals if it's cold, right? Pretty good shot that happens. Which is why when we covered the regular races, the race information, the common races, almost all of the immunities are underneath Elder. So you can see how this was very much thought through. Like, you don't get to just go get an immunity from an Elder race and then go play a Dragon, right? Because you can't augment if you're an Elder of your race or vice versa, right? So they've thought it through really well with this augment. Like, the people that designed this rulebook put a lot of time and effort and thought into how this stuff works. And that's part of the reason why I'm covering it, because I really want to show the community how much the rule makers of this game spent and how much like thought process went into this, because this is a really cool rule book. And I know that that sounds super nerdy and dorky, but like I love diving into this stuff, and it's part of why I'm so passionate about the game, and it's part of why I'm willing to sit down in front of a YouTube screen and scream into a microphone alone in my room about like I'll put it in the layman terms. Like it's why I'm willing to do something like this. Is because I think that the people put so much time and effort into this game that the effort that they put in should be shown. Yeah. So hopefully those were some brownie points to get people to like me, I guess. But yeah, that was Dragon. Dragon is cool. They get to breathe freaking fire if you're a fire dragon, and you get to do cool stuff. And you're yeah, a good multi-augment race. And we'll be jumping over to Eldritch Trickster next. All right, thanks for watching Dragon.